trying to get the technology to do what you want it to do.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, wow.
Can y'all see my screen?
Yes.
Hey, wow.
Beautiful, beautiful. And you know, I know that there are going to be a lot of questions in the presentation because I'm going to be covering quite a bit. So please just note down your questions in the chat so that we can address it. And if you have any questions that you want to, talk about that's not in the chat at the end, please feel free. We'll be able to address that at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So as I was introduced, I'm the Executive Director of Appeal Incorporated. And Appeal is, primarily, well, we're known for a couple of things. One major thing, obviously, is a credit union that we are in the process of starting. The other thing that we're known for is the co-op, which Baba mentioned, and then something else we're known for is the financial literacy workshops and our historical cultural literacy workshops.
Mm-hmm.
These are all different ways that we aim to uplift Black people. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Appeal, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on Appeal per se today, even though I will definitely touch on some topics. I'll touch on some topics that are very much in line with Appeal, and a lot of what I'll be talking about today, Appeal does. So it'll be quite fitting to go ahead and include Appeal in those instances. So let me go ahead and get started.
And Kelechi, I like the title that you picked also, Baba. I think it's good. You have community generational wealth as well as individual. That's important.
Yeah, bro.
Mm-hmm.
So, because that we tend to talk about the individual wealth, but not so much the community wealth.
Yes. Yeah.
Should this slide show? Okay, let me actually get out of this. Okay, see where it want to be. All right, trying to get the technology to obey me. All right, so the very first thing we need to define is wealth, right? Because it can definitely mean different things. And many of those definitions are equally valid, but they're not necessarily what we're talking about today. And the wealth we're referring to is really abundance, right? Prosperity, material assets, and we know that there are certainly other things, especially family, spiritual connection. All these things are valuable to the human being. But in this particular presentation, we're talking about wealth, right? Financial security is a real simple way of defining wealth. Now, what is generational wealth, right? Because you can have a wealth as an individual, but generational wealth is legacy, right? That's wealth that's transferred from one generation to another. The transfer of financial assets and that security that comes with it from one generation to another. It's something that this country, the United States, was built on. Not our generational wealth, but I mean, our labor, but not our wealth. But other people's wealth allows them to control industry and control politics and what have you. in this country through building of generational wealth, and we've been pretty much left out of it systemically. So it's important that we understand what it is and understand how we can change that, right? So generational wealth or wealth in general can include cash, which is obviously simplest form of currency, right? Art, investments, stocks, bonds, CDs, all types of investments that folks can have in their portfolio as part of their wealth. And staking a business is example of what you get with a stock. We don't think about stocks in that way, but that's basically what it is. But you can also have staking a business without a stock. You can go get partnerships and start businesses or buy parts of businesses that will be part of your wealth, right? Your estate. And then we have real estate, of course, and other properties, cars, furniture, what have you. So these are just examples of the type of elements that make up wealth, and oftentimes the generational wealth that's passed down from one generation to another, right? We're talking about building generational wealth. And in order to build generational wealth, first you have to gain an understanding of financial matters, of finance. You need to improve your financial literacy. Of course, Appeal does that. We have financial literacy workshop series. It's core to our organization, and that's because we understand that people need to have that basic understanding just to function and to elevate themselves, right? To build that wealth in order to transfer it to the next generation, you have to understand how money works, right? And there's several things that you're going to pick up from financial literacy, including how to budget. Budgeting is very important. If you cannot keep track of what you're making, then you always be broke. I mean, there's a saying that says that a fool can never make enough money or have enough money. He'll always be broke. I mean, there might be some exceptions. So there's a lot of fools out there who got a lot of money who spend how they want. But of course, those are exceptions. In general, you have to be mindful of your spending and make sure you're not spending really what you're making. You're really living under your budget. And then, of course, savings. We must prioritize savings. And I'm just going to go over a few of these. And I'm not spending a lot of time on any of these because we have whole workshops that deal with them. And if you're an Appeal member, you can go to the archives and watch them. So I'm just going to sort of touch on them a little bit. I believe you need to pay yourself first. We know we have, other folks that are calling, got the house, the car, the utilities, the government, taxes, the church. Folks give 10% to the church, and that's fine. But you should give 10% to yourself. So put that in your savings. 10% of whatever your net income, you should put that aside. You can do whatever you want to do with it in terms of investing, but make sure that you're saving it. That's you paying yourself first before paying anybody else. That's a good way to make sure you're not living above your means and are able to really form a good financial foundation. Managing your credit history. We do workshops on credit as well. Annualcreditreport.com. Annualcreditreport.com is the government free website. Annualcreditreport.com. At a minimum, get a copy of your credit report. You get a free one every single year. Whether you get it or not, it's available to you, and it affects you in a lot of different ways. And again, I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but I did want to mention that because it's important to know your credit history to get control of it. Because one thing about America, with all of its flaws and imperfections, it's one of the few places where you can use credit to do amazing things. Access to credit here is like nowhere else in the world. And managed well, it can be a key tool for building wealth. Other places don't allow you to have credit as easily and as much as you get here. So it is something to take advantage of. Of course, paying down debt. You can't really talk about investing if you got a whole bunch of debt. Paying interest is more than even what you're getting from investments. So it's important to manage your debt, pay down your debt. Of course, home ownership. Home ownership is the easiest way to create generational wealth. It represents most of the transfer of generational wealth in America. That's the primary portion of most people. On average, most people's wealth that they transfer from one generation to another is their home, or other property, but primarily their primary residence for most people. So that's real key, home ownership. So the road to building generational wealth includes all these things and more, right? But home ownership is really cornerstone for most Americans because it appreciates and whatever happens with the economy, the value of property and land will go with it. If it's inflation, housing prices will inflate. It goes along with it. So it's better than money in the bank. It's gonna continue to grow. Of course, as the population increases, demand for housing increases as well. So also, in addition to those things, you also need to think a little bit outside the box. Just doing the basic is okay, but if you really want to build generational wealth, you really want to begin to invest. And there's a lot of easy ways to invest. For folks who have never invested before, it may seem daunting. It may seem like, what do I even get started with that? But it's really a lot easier, especially now, right? A lot of apps that people use, Cash App, you can literally buy stock and bonds. You can buy crypto on Cash App. But that's just one example. So a lot of tools that people are already using make it very easy for you to buy stock. Back in the day, you had to buy a whole stock of a company or even a mutual fund. Now, apps like that allow you to buy fragments, right? So, maybe you want to buy some Apple stock. Apple stock is, I don't know what it is now. It's probably, 200, something like that. You may not have 200, you might have 20, or you may have 10. You can buy that portion of that stock. And as it grows, so does your money, right? So it's much easier to invest on your own these days. Of course, there are brokerages that will help you with that, but it's much easier. And there are a lot of other, small banks that are dedicated to helping folks invest, and they have apps and programs like Robinhood and things like that. Of course, college funds for dependents. It oftentimes catches us by surprise that, wow, he's 16. He got to go to college in a couple of years, or she's 18 and college is right here. But when they were one, it was time to start planning for their college. And that's oftentimes some of the hardest financial brick walls that we hit as a community, is not planning, because college is not optional, as oftentimes folks say it is. Back in the 60s and 70s, college was around, but you didn't have to go to college. If you had a high school degree, you can get a pretty good job, good paying job. Most jobs only require a high school degree, entry level. They'll train you, whatever they're doing. Regardless of what you're doing, if you were looking for a job in 1980, if you didn't have a high school degree, your choices were very limited. Well, in 2020, in this case, 2023, that's where college is right now. If most jobs are gonna require a college degree. They're not asking for you to have a degree in what they're, employing you for, just to show you a basic level of proficiency, right? So what was a requirement being a high school degree is now a requirement being a college degree. college degrees don't get you jobs. It just demonstrate a certain level of proficiency. I mean, depending on what your major is, of course. So it's really that basic at this point. So we need to plan for, for college for our children, even if they choose not to go. You should expect them to, because at this point it's really necessary, regardless. So even if they want to own their own business, you're going to have the education, even to qualify for a loan, show somebody what you're doing. So it's basic at this point. So we should plan for it. Oftentimes, the catch is by surprise. It's a big drain on our resources when it does. Life insurance. We don't think about life insurance, especially permanent life insurance, which you can borrow on. It can be your own little private bank. It's there for you. It doesn't expire. There's a lot of interesting uses for life insurance, and it's a great investment because it's actually a tax shelter, because what you gain from it is not taxed, and that's unlike other things. So that's a really important tool. And not to keep referring to financial literacy workshops, but there's a bunch of workshops we've done on life insurance that really deal with that, and how to take advantage of that, because that's really how the richest folks in America made their money. It wasn't using life insurance, because they use that the money in their life insurance to invest and build and so on and so forth. We can do that as well. It's just having the knowledge to do it. And Isusu, I mentioned this because this is a tool that has allowed a lot of our people, especially continental folks, especially Ethiopians, to build immense wealth. It has to do with a savings, but savings with a group, and incentives to do so. A lot of the garages, the restaurants that folks see in DC, wow, Ethiopians own all these things. Well, that's how they do it. They use their susus. They're able to organize themselves and use those pots to get into these businesses, and they prosper from it. And it's not just them, it's pretty much, it's a global phenomenon. And it's a tool that we can have among us. I know several Isusus have been formed from Appeal during the presentations on the Isusus, and that's a high success, because the folks are able to empower themselves with what they have in their vicinity. So it's a really important tool for building generational wealth. We have to think long term, right? It's not just about what's going on now. We need to think far into the future. And that means we need to begin to have conversations with our family and our children, right? And I'm going to talk more about the family part later, because that really comes in when you talk about transferring wealth. If your family's ignorant about, finances, oftentimes it comes into play when it comes time to see what happens with grandpas or grandmas or mommies or daddies, whatever. It's important to educate your family, but especially your children. When they're young, teach them about credit, teach them about savings, teach them about investing, and invest for them. I'll give one example of what I do with my children. One particular example, my daughter, I think she was probably 12 or 13. My youngest daughter, maybe she was a little younger than that. But anyway, she wanted an iPod for her birthday. She was, daddy, bugging me for it. iPod. I'm like, So when it came time to her birthday, what I did was I bought her stock in Apple. I used the same money, however the iPod was, I bought her that much stock in Apple. And now that stock is almost worth $800. It's doubled and doubled and doubled. And now she has $800 and growing in the account that she can use when she turns 18. And if I just bought her the iPod, that thing would be not only broken, but obsolete, right? But these are different ways we can sort of incorporate financial literacy, consciousness, financial skills into our children. Have these conversations, have little family meetings around the table, talk about, finance. it's important that the next generation is up to date on these things. Otherwise, they'll be victim to a lot of things we were victim of. Now, in terms of wealth, we know that there's a major wealth gap in this country. Black folks are, about an eighth, right? Some say a tenth of the wealth wealth of white folks in this country. And most of that is because of, generational wealth being passed down from folks who were able to build it because of programs and so on and so forth that favored them and oftentimes excluded us. But some of that is also because we don't plan. We don't have an inheritance plan. We're wishing on a star, I guess. Oftentimes we don't take the time to actually put together an inheritance plan. That causes a loss of the little wealth that we have in some instances, and in some instances, a large amount of wealth. And we can name a bunch of celebrities like Prince, like Chadwick Boseman, who died without even a will. And the government got a chunk of that money because that's what happens when you don't have that. We talk about Black buying power oftentimes. Black buying power does not translate into actual power, right? It's only potential. It's really our ability to be consumers. A lot of the money that we're spending isn't necessarily even our money. And this is, of course, a projection, but assuming the projection is accurate, and it's fairly accurate compared to other, with other groups. Most of the money is actually, a lot of the money is actually money that's not ours, borrowed money. Credit cards count as spending. We do a lot of that, right? Creating debt, that's spending, but that's not your money. So that's not really wealth. But we are wonderful consumers. We need to translate that energy, that spending into wealth. We are pretty much and have been for the same period that you see the wealth, the spending going up and up and up every year, almost like a straight line. The wealth has been flat, right? We're not seeing, of course, we were already at the bottom, but we're not seeing any improvement that would reflect what we're seeing in the spending. And a lot of that is really because we're not planning inheritance like we need to, right? So this is sort of a picture of most of what's involved with estate planning. And I'm going to talk about some of them. Like I said, this is not an estate planning workshop, so I'm not going to get into them too deeply, but some of them I will because they are important. All these elements are really important to understand when you're planning generational transfer of wealth, right? So these are some of the major elements of estate planning. Of course, you have your will, right? Last will and testament. It's a basic, right? You have your trusts, which I'll talk about a little bit, living trust, irrevocable trust, and financial power of attorney. So where are we losing a lot of our wealth? Well, we lose a lot of our wealth to probate, right? Some of it is lost to taxes, but for most of us, your inheritance or your estate would not be taxable. Most of us are not going to meet that $6 million of value of our estate. So the tax is not so much of an issue, but a lot of it is being lost during probate. Sister Amy Griffin, who does presentations for us, whenever I talk to her, there's always some story about somebody in the community and they didn't have anything planned. Now they're calling her, and so much gets lost in that process of probate because we don't prepare. And I get it, nobody wants to die, but we all gonna die. It's a fact of life. So not preparing is actually, it's kind of productive if you really want to build generational wealth. A will is is a core element of estate planning. But if you die without a will, you're categorized as something called interstate, which means essentially it's almost like you're gone now, but your estate is now a ward of the state. The state has full control of what happens with your assets. I don't care if you're a prince or whoever down the street, the state is now in charge of all your assets, all your estate, right? And it's now their job to decide based on their judgment, rules, whatever, norms they have, decide who gets what. They don't know about your mixed relationships and your partners and all these other entities that may not necessarily be in the books. Your best friend, the person who took care of you when you were sick, they don't know any of that. They're gonna go by whatever charts they have, and they're gonna charge you a grip to do that for you, when all that could be avoided, by having a will. Now, one thing a lot of folks don't know, even with a will, you still go through probate, but at least your will is going to decide who gets what and what gets, put wherever. But with just a will, you still go through probate, and there's still a fee associated with that. But it's still better than not having a will. A will is a basic, right? So in order to avoid the probate process, the judge, the court, that's why people get trusts, right? The first trust I'm going to talk about is a revocable living trust. And I know I'm going through a lot of information, and I'll go through a lot more information by the time we're done. So please, if you have any questions, put them in the chat and I will address them at the end. I want to get through everything. So just be mindful of time. Just put in the chat and I'll definitely address it. So a revocable trust or a living trust, revocable, it's right there in the name, you can change it at will. There's not a lockbox, right? But you can use it to decide, what happens with your estate. Of course, this is why you're alive. When you actually pass away, it's no longer revocable, right? Because you lack the ability to make your wishes known once you're gone. So once you transition, a revocable trust becomes an irrevocable trust. But until that time, it's a revocable trust. You can, change it at will, alter it. What's in your trust still belongs to you. It doesn't have its own tax ID number, for instance. Everything's still your social security number. It's still your assets. So in a way, it's not protected in that trust, in the sense that if something were to happen to you, let's say you get sued or whatever, the assets in that living trust is still accessible. Now, living trust is a good alternative or addition to a will, in that it avoids a probate court, and only a lawyer that you have preparing is involved with that process, and only the trustees even know, because it's a trust, it's private. It's not public record. If you have a will that's being administered through probate, it's public record. Through the trust, it's not, right? There's also an irrevocable trust, which is a legal separation from your assets. Still your assets. Technically, it's not your assets, but in reality, it is your assets. A revocable trust would generally have its own tax ID number. It's like a different entity. It's not a person, but it's like a person, right? It can own things, it can buy things, it can do things. You would be the trustee of it, while you're around after your transition. You have folks you would name who now take over the trust. But it is a lockbox. It has all the benefits of the revocable trust, but it has the added benefit of protecting you from your assets, protecting you from liability. No matter what happens to you, and your other assets, or something happens to you in the street, or even if you're a lot of folks, unfortunately, end up in old folks' homes. Those folks can get money after you transition from your revocable trust. But if it was an irrevocable trust, they wouldn't have access to it because, again, it's like a different person, right? So this is a little graphic to show the difference. The irrevocable trust and revocable trust both are important and good for estate planning. They both avoid the probate process, but you have the additional benefit of asset protection and so on and so forth. And you can also include Medicare planning, other end of life planning in their revocable trust. I also talk about the financial power of attorney, which gives somebody the ability to act on your behalf if you're incapacitated. That can mean a lot of different things. You could be sick. You could be in a coma. You could be incarcerated. There's a lot of situations where folks are unable to act on their behalf, and power of attorney allows somebody else who you trust, who you know, to act on your behalf, right? The power of attorney goes away the second the person who issued it passes away. So as soon as you pass away, the power of attorney is gone, right? But while you're around, it allows certain things to be done on your behalf, and it doesn't require court approval or involvement anyway, right? So it's another tool as part of the estate planning process. Other elements of estate planning, which I'm not really going to get into too much, are the living will, which is also a medical will. What happens to you when medical situations come up, right? You have advanced directive, which is very similar to a medical living will. It also can include financial directives. Of course, life insurance, which I touched on a little bit, estate taxes. Again, at this point, most people are not going to have to worry about estate taxes. It's really for the folks who are, multimillionaires, right? Most people don't really have to worry about it in their estate, but it is an element to keep in mind, depending on what your estate happens to be, right? So if you fail to plan, right, what you succeed in doing is letting the government choose who benefits from all your hard work, everything you've put together, right? Everything you worked hard for, you put in the hands of the government to decide and choose. And this happens a lot to a lot of our people, a lot of folks in our community. And unfortunately, this is where a lot of generational wealth transfer is lost, opportunities for it, both to the cost, and sometimes it's transferred to somebody, who may not even have a relationship with you, having an interest in keeping, whatever it is you want to keep going. And oftentimes, within, a month, work that folks have spent their whole lives, to put together is gone because of the lack of planning. So it's really important that we plan. So where are some other areas where we're leaking in terms of generational wealth, right? If you take the time and you do the work and you put in the effort to build it, it's a shame that oftentimes it's lost. And one of the major challenges, which I've heard over and over again, is that 6-letter word, family, right? Our family's not always on the same page with us. I mean, that's in situations where we lose a parent or a grandparent, or even when we transition and our family needs to, do something with our assets. Oftentimes, family members are not on the same page, which brings me back to that earlier discussion about the importance of sharing financial literacy with the family, having those conversations. By the time you or the person has passed away, it's too late. It's too late at that point. After the loved one passes away, you pass away, it is too late. You cannot build your shield on the battlefield, right? It's too late at that point. So we have to begin to have these conversations, plan, and make sure that people are prepared for certain things that will come and are able to analyze and understand. Otherwise, greed, short-term, thinking, sibling rivalry, what have you, comes into play. We have to be creative when it comes to preserving generational wealth, especially in these situations where you're there, where a transition has happened in the family, and we need to find a way to preserve what's been built. I've heard so many heartbreaking stories right here in DC. DC has some of the most progressive, industrious Black folk who understood that it was important to build generational wealth, and they put a lot into, buying property and making other investments. And oftentimes, as soon as they pass away, within a year or two, all of that's gone because people are short-sighted and just don't have that sense of the need to prioritize. So it's important to have this conversation. I'm gonna give an example of a situation, right? My grandfather-in-law, my wife's grandfather, passed away. He was somebody who had a lot of property, several properties in very key parts of DC. And really short time, there was no agreement to preserve it. It was more like, I got this medical bill, I need to buy this, or I need that. And short-sightedness, they got rid of it. And all those properties right now are worth at least $1 million. And all the folks that got the money don't have it, right? The last property of his that he built was the house that he lived in, and there was one of his sons was living in the house. That son passed away, so it came time to do something with the property. And despite pleas to keep it, the drive to just get the cash was too much. And the property wasn't in ideal condition, but it was still worth quite a bit, at least over $600,000. And that's where they ended up putting it in the market for it after, I think it was put in for maybe $800 at first. So you have $600,000, you got a house, you got 4 brothers, and 2 of the brothers really wanted their cut. They wanted that $200,000 for whatever. Didn't think about, this is the house they grew up in, no sentimental value whatsoever, just give me the cash, sell it. Instead of doing that, the brothers could have gotten together and had one of the brothers refinance the house or buy the house, depending on how you go about it, for $400,000. Talking about they have it on the market for $600,000. If they refinance it for $400,000 and pay off the other brothers, or buy it, and get a mortgage. Either way, you're getting a mortgage. Use the mortgage to pay off the other brothers. You have a $400,000 mortgage on a $600,000 house. A $400,000 mortgage, at that time, you're paying less than $2,000 a month in mortgage, less than that. And this is a house in Tacoma, DC, where they're charging $3,000 plus a month to rent a house. So the situation could have been where the house was kept in the family with one of the brothers. The other 2 brothers got their cut. The brother that kept it could have continued that generational wealth and make $1,000 on top of it after the mortgage is paid off, right? So these are examples that that about being creative, right? And there are other situations that come up, but we have to be creative about preserving generational wealth. Otherwise, we lose it, right? There are a lot of creative ways to do that if we have that passion and interest. But again, we have to educate our families so that they know, the value of it and how it's sort of transitions. So how does generational wealth apply to community, right? Businesses, organizations, financial institutions. Well, one real basic thing, right, as community building generational wealth involves really supporting Black businesses. Black businesses are the number one job creator. I believe it's 64% of all jobs in the United States are created by small businesses, right? So job creation is a key part, is a key give that Black businesses give us. White folks are not knocking down the door. They don't have to have what do you call it, a boycott day about Black businesses. They boycott Black businesses every day. That's life, right? So if we don't support Black businesses, they don't exist. They're not sustainable. They're not able to function, right? And when they are functioning, they create jobs, they build generational wealth in those families, which can now be translated into generational wealth, right, in the community. There is an interdependence between businesses we have and the community. Any business that closes is going to affect the community in some adverse way. As they grow, the community is able to benefit from what they provide and their expansion, not just in terms of jobs, but in the services they provide. So that interdependency is critical. And we must support Black businesses in order to support that interdependency. And it's also critical to controlling the economics of our communities. It's one thing to say, so-and-so got opened up a shop here, or this person from this area, or ethnicity or race open up a shop here. But we have Black businesses that we walk past every day, right, to go and shop at that other place. It's key to recycling the Black dollar, right? Supporting Black businesses. We must build them, start them, build and support them. And for those of us who have Black businesses, it's important that we prepare for the next generation. I know a lot of businesses in our community right now where the owners are ready for retirement. They've been doing it for 40 years, 30 years, 50 years in some instances, and they're ready to pass on the baton. They may hope the child of theirs would have done it, but in most of these instances, the child has their own interests. They have another, career, whatever situation may be. We need to prepare. We need to have mentorships and internships. It doesn't always have to be your biological child. These businesses are cornerstones of community, right? Especially when we talk about generational wealth in the community. So it's important that we prepare ahead of time through mentorships, through apprenticeships in these Black businesses to make sure that they last past a generation, right? That allows us to continue to be codependent on each other, and more importantly, be co-supportive of each other by having those businesses. Because when they close, a void is created, jobs are lost, services are lost, and we're now oftentimes forced to go to non-Black businesses, right? And then we need to support Black manufacturers. There's a lot of Black people that make things, and we need to support them. We need to make what we use in order to use what we make. If we're dependent on our adversaries or folks who may not have our best interests at heart for everything we use, especially things that we use on a daily basis, right? Then how can we even talk about freedom? That's literally the reason why Appeal started the Black Saturday Co-op. A lot of folks don't understand what it is. They think it's, I don't know, whatever they think it is. They don't understand the scope of it, right? The idea is to change our habits and get us to not just reinvest in Black businesses, but reinvest in Black manufacturers so we can continue to produce products that we need to be sold at Black businesses. Of course, at the Black side of the co-op, everything we sell there is made by a Black manufacturer. But it's also about the future, the growth of community. You need to support more and more Black manufacturers to produce more and more things so that we have less and less things that we have to go outside of the community to buy. In order to recycle Black dollars, you have to produce the things Black people want to buy, right? So supporting Black manufacturers is key to that. At the Black side of the co-op, as I mentioned, we actually started with really one line of products, freedom paper products, right? That's how we started. But now we have probably about 50 lines of products, and every few months we'll add something else. Of course, we also added the farmers market, and the idea is to grow. And the more you support the co-op and support Black manufacturers, and for some of these manufacturers that we have at the co-op, we are really their number one customer. We buy stuff in such bulk that if we weren't able to do that, it'll make a big dent in their ability to function, right? And that's all from you supporting, the co-op. You buying your bathroom tissue, your detergent, your toothpaste, your what have you, right? All those renewable, usable consumables that you're going to spend money on anyway. And that's why we focus on personal care products, because they're consumables. They're things that you're always going to need. Everybody needs bathroom tissue. I mean, maybe some exceptions, but for the most part, right? Everybody needs detergent, soap. These are all things, toothpaste, mouthwash. These are things that we go through, right? So it's important, that we pick those because we want to make sure that we're meeting those everyday needs. And as time goes on, we'll expand to more and more things with the support that we have. But the idea is really the vision of the Black side of the co-op is to have a Black Costco. It's not just the thing that you see here today. Costco didn't start as Costco, right? BJ's didn't start as BJ's, right? It was a small co-op that somebody started, they supported it. Now we go there and shop and we're like, oh, wow, but are we willing to build our own, right? It's okay to shop at their stores, but we need to be able to build our own, be willing to do the work and get in early and support our own so we can have our own BJ's and Costco and whatnot. That's what the co-op is about. We believe that there's enough manufacturers and customers, Black manufacturers and customers, that we can put them together and really take Black manufacturing to a whole other level. Of course, we have products from all over the country, including actually products from some parts of the continent, Ghana, Senegal, but primarily it's different parts of the United States. Whether it's the brothers that make True in Atlanta, the sister that makes the Good Vibe cleaning products in New Jersey, the brother that makes the freedom paper products in Baltimore. Wherever we are, right? So the idea is to really fortify that process. That's why we started the co-op, and we're really grateful for the folks who come every 2 weeks, first and third Saturday, and support, because you're really a part of building something significant, not just talking about it, right? We're making impacts in our community. We are creating jobs in our community. As a matter of fact, we're hiring somebody for the co-op starting July, all from you supporting it, right? So this is not theoretical, right? This is us doing what we're talking about. And we're grateful for those who support that and have the faith to support that process. But that's all part of building community generational wealth, right? And we cannot forget about our organizations, right? How does generational wealth apply to community organizations? In some ways similar as the businesses, in our organizations, the ones that we're, engaged in, we're part of, we need to also find ways to engage the next generation, right? Mentorships, apprenticeships in some instances, collaborations in some instances. We need to find a way to make sure the next generation is going to continue the work that we are so passionate about. In addition to that, we must support community organizations, the ones that we love, in our budgets. Talked about budgets earlier. We should have regular contributions to these organizations if we want them to grow, to expand, to do more, and to continue past the folks who are currently running it. We need to make sure we support them. There's an initiative called 10-10-50, which I believe is $10 donation towards the organization, 10 hours volunteering organization, whatever organization in the community, and $50 spent at a Black business every month. This is a pledge that folks were asked to do to maintain support for not just the businesses, but the organizations in our community. It's important that we do that. And something that we definitely don't do enough of, or at all in some instances, in most instances, is we don't think about putting the organizations that we're part of in our wills or our trusts. And that's what other folks are doing. When you hear about so-and-so endowment, so-and-so sponsored by this endowment, this building and this school is from this endowment, that's when other people, other communities, non-Black people in most instances, are leaving support for institutions, organizations that they care about, right, in their will. So when they transition, that group, that entity gets a portion of their will, their trust. And we need to begin to do that, because until we're doing that, it's much harder for us to talk about transferring generational wealth. It's much harder for the community to grow in a way that it should grow. Even with the wealth that one generation builds, the next generation doesn't benefit from it, especially those who are like-minded. So it's really important that we begin to do that. Of course, Appeal is one of those organizations. I'm not necessarily putting out Appeal to donate or to leave in a will of trust, but why not? But it's not just Appeal, any organization, right? If you're part of a community organization, it shouldn't just be me supporting it now. It should be, how am I going to support it after I'm gone? How does my transition, how do I incorporate it into my estate? It's important that we do that. And we have faith in the folks that continue to work to use that benefit for the benefit of the community in those organizations, which are focused in what it is that we were and are passionate about. So I am going to talk a little bit about Appeal. Of course, I think all of you are here are familiar with Appeal, but for those who may not be, Appeal is an organization that has a mission of organizing and strategically utilizing the vast resources of people of African descent locally, nationally, and internationally to facilitate economic empowerment and educational enrichment to produce, and this is the key part, strong, self-sufficient, prosperous communities. A lot of the elements that I'm talking about today, you'll see that Appeal is already doing, right? And Appeal stands for Association of People for Pan-Africanist Economic Advancement Through Leverage. So I mentioned Black buying power before, and I've talked about the need to support, promote Black businesses, right? Support organizations in the community, facilitate manufacturing, support manufacturing. We recycle our dollar in all these ways. But in addition to that, we need to control the financial institutions in our community. At least we need to have a financial institution in our community that can actually work to our benefit, right? And this particular one is one of the major cornerstones of Appeal, one of our major platforms. So Appeal is in the process of developing a credit union to facilitate and promote ownership and wealth creation in our community, right? And because we know that most of us have bank accounts somewhere, right? And while your money is in that bank, it's being used by whoever owns the bank. Doesn't matter who owns it. They're using it for whatever they're using it for. While it's sitting there in the account, because they're able to use it as leverage to borrow off of, to make loans off of, where they earn interest, and so on and so forth. All by you just having your money in their bank. So we need to have our own, right? So a credit union, unlike a bank, of course, is a nonprofit financial cooperative, and it's owned by its members. It's very mutually beneficial. Instead of distributing profits to private owners, in a credit union, all the revenue is recycled back to the members, right? And in various forms, reduced fees, high savings rates, so on and so forth. So we need to allow our money that we already have, it's in the bank somewhere, right? To work for us. And of course, the deposits also work in the same way as when they have our money. In the case, it would be leveraged to create loans and other services for other members. So the focus of the credit union that Appeal is starting will be providing funding for land and business development to help control the production, distribution, and retailing of goods and services in our community. Of course, we're already engaged in that process, but having a financial institution that can actually facilitate it in that way is critical, right? To help produce employment, right? And training opportunities in our community. And of course, financial ownership and wealth creation and empowerment, right? Creating that self-sufficient, prosperous, those self-sufficient, prosperous communities. Some of the services that a credit union will have, nothing surprising here, right? Accounts, checking accounts, savings accounts, online banking, app banking, which is called mobile banking, loans of all types, car, home, what have you, student loans, and of course, business loans and investments. And that's a major target that we have, and that's something that can apply not just nationally, but internationally. So a portion of the revenue, right, from the Appeal for the credit union will go towards investments, right? Depositors will be able to access those funds for investments, for developments all over our community, because these are our people. Our members are the ones who can have access to that capital. So that can be used to build our community, and it can be used to begin to invest on a continent. All that mineral wealth we talk about Africa having, but we don't have access to it because we don't have the capital. This is the way of building that capital. And I'll talk a little bit about investing in Africa a little bit later on in the presentation. So credit unions, I mentioned, are owned by its members, right? Each member, regardless of how much they have in there, has one vote. They elect the board. They have control over the operations, the daily operations of the credit union. And of course, the credit union itself is operated by its own members, and is operated for the benefit of those members. Not to get too far into the weeds about the process, but basically, there is a not really a threshold, but I would say a minimum of how much you need to raise to start a credit union. We're actually, I would say 85 to 90% there already, which is, we're approaching 300,000 in collective assets contribution, which includes advance deposits, donations, and operational money. But we're very much close to that 300,000, and we appreciate all those who have supported us in various ways to achieve this particular mission, right? Supported the idea of creating this credit union. We're getting closer and closer to it. As a matter of fact, right now we're making a push because we've completed the first phase of the process. Now we're in the second phase of the process, and a key part of that second phase is knowing what our members want or need or expect from a credit union. So there's a credit union survey going on. We've been promoting it, talking about it, right? Trying to get folks to respond to it. Every member should have gotten an email asking them to complete the survey. And it's not a long survey, 5-10 minutes and you're done. But it's critical. It actually is, folks may not appreciate how critical it is, but we literally cannot move forward until this is done. So if you're an appeal member and you haven't completed your survey, please do so. If you are an appeal member and you didn't get the survey, please email us at info@appealinc.org, and we'll make sure that you get it. Can't explain why you may not have gotten it, but everybody should have gotten it. But it's important that you complete it, and we have all types of incentives for folks who complete the survey. We have a coupon for the Black Saturday Co-op. Actually, I think it's a $5 coupon if you complete the survey. Every week we have a drawing. We give away a flash drive which has financial literacy workshops on it. That's great. And we have a drawing. Once we get to our goal, we're going to have a drawing of all the folks who completed the survey. Obviously, our members who completed the survey for an African ancestry DNA test of their choice, which pays it forward in so many other ways. So it is critical. If you haven't already done so, please do so. I think the emails usually go out on Tuesday reminding you. So even if you don't know where it is, it may be in your spam, just do a search, but please complete that survey. It is critical. So if you're not a member, obviously join. You can join at appealinc.org. If you are a member and once you join, we want you to support one of the committees, volunteer for one of the committees. In terms of the credit union, there are really 3 committees that are critical, which is the Credit Union Planning Committee, obviously. Then we have the Membership and Outreach Committee. We also have a Fundraising Committee. We have other committees in appeal, but in terms of the credit union, these are the ones that are really critical for the credit union. We also have our Financial Literacy Committee. We have our Historical Cultural Literacy Committee. We have our think tank, and obviously the Black Saturday Co-op. There are many other committees where you can get engaged, but in terms of the credit union, these are really the 3 that are key. Especially the fundraising committee, which we have a fundraiser coming up in September. So your support and your participation is really critical to making that happen. And of course, you can always make a donation to Appeal at appealinc.org. So go to appealinc.org/donate, and you can make a donation. You can even make it annual. You can make it quarterly. You can make it monthly. Automatically. You can actually set it up automatically to make a contribution however you want it. So that's really important and appreciated, right? And if you are a member, of course, we encourage our members to make advance deposits. You can actually make a deposit in your account now. Even though the credit union is not operational yet, we have an account, a pseudo account set up for you, which is designated to you. And where it is, it's actually in a CD, it's earning interest. You don't have access to it, but it belongs to you. It cannot be used for anything else but to fund your credit union account. If for some reason the credit union does not launch, if for some reason we all decide, hey, nice try, whatever the situation may be, we don't see that happening because we've been progressing so well. But even in that situation, the money goes back to you. So it's not even a donation. It's just your money that we're keeping custody of. And that shows the interest, the strength of our credit union charter application. So those advance deposits are really helpful, and they are interest bearing, so you get a little bit of something, not much, but a little bit of something growing on top of it while we have it, right? So if you're a member, please make those advance deposits. Some members do it on a regular basis. Just like with the donations, you can schedule these monthly, weekly, however, quarterly, annually, however you want to do it. But please, we encourage our members to make those advance deposits in their account. So the real obstacles to whatever we decide to do as a people is never really money. And this can get confusing to folks because they think, well, isn't that what you're trying to know? What we need to do is raise the consciousness of our people. Once we deal with the ignorance, deal with the lack of faith, which has been put in us, it's a trauma that we have. There are a lot of stories, Black folk who won't go to Black doctors or Black lawyers. They won't support, they won't shop at a Black store, they won't hire a Black, whatever. All this trauma that we internalize, it's a lack of faith that we can do anything ourselves without, white folk or somebody else. But it's critical that we overcome it. This ignorance, this lack of faith in each other, and the pull of individualism, especially in America, over community. That's the biggest obstacle that we have, keeping us from progressing and achieving some of the things we want to achieve. Individualism, in many ways, right? The idea that we can't look past our immediate need or interest, think about the larger community. Oftentimes, we feel self-important and aren't willing to make certain sacrifices for the betterment of the whole. But that's something we have to teach ourselves out of, train ourselves out of, and some of our workshops work towards doing that, both the financial literacy ones, but even the ones that SEAC hold, deal with, really building a sense of community and overcoming the trauma that makes us not have faith, imani, right, in each other. Imani is faith in our leaders, ourselves, and ultimately the victory of our struggle. Do we really have faith that we will achieve what it is that we're trying to achieve, right? So in the long term, we need to think global. And this is where a lot of us definitely fall short, because it is harder in some instances, but it's important because the world continues to turn and continues to change. And if we limit ourselves, if we limit our scope of wealth or even how we see the world to where we are, what country we're in, whether it's the United States or somewhere else, we are really limiting our ability to see opportunities to build true generational wealth, right? To build individual and community generational wealth, we must invest in Africa. And I'm gonna repeat that. To build individual and community, true individual and community generational wealth, we must invest in Africa, because that's where we are. That's where the future is going, right? Now I'll talk about that a little bit. First, it's important that we make a physical connection to Africa. I'm always surprised how many folks have never been to the continent. If you're an African and you have not been to Africa, it's like smelling the food but never tasting it, right? We must taste it, right? You must make a physical connection to Africa. You can go to Africa for $500 these days, right? It's important to have that, make that physical connection, because it'll make it real for you. Then you'll be more apt, you'll be more able, more inspired, more equipped to make the necessary investments to and connections to build that generational wealth. We know Africa has vast mineral resources, huge reserves of everything from oil, gas, gold, diamonds, coltan, what have you, right? All essential to today's global economy. Most of the primary elements used in the function of the global economy are in Africa. The continent also has a lot of agricultural potential. We have most of the uncultivated land on Earth in Africa. We have to remember that Africa is the second largest continent, really the first largest, depending on how you measure it. But if you measure Eurasia, which is Asia is a subcontinent, and Europe is a subcontinent. The continent is a large landmass surrounded by water, and no definition is either of those a continent. The continent is really Eurasia, right? So of course Africa is not as big as Eurasia, but it's the second largest continent, and it has 40% of all of the uncultivated land on Earth. That is potential for agriculture that can be capitalized. And many countries are capitalizing. A lot of folks don't know that a lot of countries like Dubai, France, grow the majority of their vegetables in Africa. And they acquire the land, grow their vegetables, and they ship it, for their domestic use. But that's land that we can be using for the benefit of our own people. Africa is becoming a global hub. The continent has consistently seen consistent increases in economic growth over the last decades, and there's nothing suggesting any of that will discontinue, right? Because the world is changing, and it's changing in favor of Africa as countries like China become less agrarian. They're less able to really function the way they did. And it puts Africa with the high percentage of young people in position, and of course, population growth, which I'll talk about a little bit later, in a position to really become even more of that hub. So there's opportunity for us to invest. These are, I would say, the 6 main countries where Africans in the diaspora invest on the continent. Of course, Ghana. Ghana is sort of the gateway, I think, especially for African Americans, Africans born in America. Ghana was founded with the help of Africans born in America. Kwame Nkrumah obviously went to school in the U.S. and Lincoln University and so on and so forth. So the African American Association of Ghana was there when Ghana was founded. So long history there, lots of connections. So it's an easy pathway. If someone asks me what's the easiest country to travel to for the first time, if you don't know anybody, Ghana's probably it, right? We also have Kenya, which is very popular. Tanzania, which has been very popular, and especially during those revolutionary days. But even more so now, Rwanda. Rwanda is the cleanest country in Africa. Kigali, its capital, is the cleanest city in Africa, and cleaner than most cities in the world, actually. It's cleaner than DC, for sure. They have very strict litter laws. They don't even allow plastic in the country. Like if you land in Senegal, not Senegal, in Rwanda, maybe you bought something from the airport people and you have it in the bag. They will take your bag at the airport and give you a paper bag and take your plastic. That's how serious they are about plastic. They have a zero plastic policy. So it leads to very little waste, and they're very serious about being clean. But aside from that, very, very industrious. A lot of industry is being propagated there. And the cities are growing, and it looked like any other major city in the world, except that they're much better organized and much cleaner, right? They appreciate green space as they're building. So Rwanda is a very remarkable country in East Africa, and it's become very, very popular for Africans born in America. A lot of folks are setting up businesses there because of that. It's very, very very welcoming, and very easy to sort of set up because they have that industry for that. Senegal is another one, and South Africa is another popular place where Africans in the diaspora tend to invest. So the rising demand, increasing population, urbanization, right? In major regions will continue to drive the demand and value for land on the continent. And that's really everywhere, but on the continent more so because of the exponential growth. Africa's population is estimated to reach 2.5 billion, right? in just 25 years. And it will be the youngest continent in the world. Nigeria alone is set to surpass China as the second most populous country in the world by 2100, by 2100, right? That's less than 100 years. I mean, in less than 100 years, Nigeria is expected, based on the trajectory of Nigeria and China, is expected to be the second most populous in the world. And by 100 years, Nigeria is expected to surpass India as the most populous country in the world. That is the world that we need to prepare for now. That's the economy, right? That's the environment that we need to prepare for now. Because if we wait as a community and we're not, if we're not getting in when it's easier to get in, when it gets to that point, it'll be very, very difficult to get in, because the players will be multiplied. So it's important that we recognize that. One of the easiest things to buy is, especially from a distance, and maintain and get value because it goes up, is property, right? So why would I want to buy property in sub-Saharan Africa? Well, man, it's stable investment. Regardless of where you are in the world, just like here in the US, I'm talking about the property values here. No matter what happens with inflation, right? Property value goes up. Same thing happens on the continent. Plain land, even if it's not, touched, virgin land, it goes up in value over time. A lot of folks will buy land and just wait for it to go up in value and then sell it, buy large pieces of farmland and hold it for some time and cut it into smaller pieces and sell it for, 10 times what they paid for it, right? And I have a lot of stories about increases of value in land in Nigeria. I've seen property literally double in value in a matter of 4 to 5 years in Nigeria. I mean, literally double in value. So land is a smart long-term investment to hold. It allows you the benefit of raising value without necessarily having to do anything, to maintain it, because it's land. And you really want to talk about buying land in an area where you have that expansion and growth, right? And the rapid growth of Africa's population paired with the expanding middle class. And that's the phenomenon that's really happening on the continent, both east, west, south, right? I'm not so much talking about the northern region, which is mostly Arab controlled, but really west, south, and east. You see this really rapid expansion of the middle class. The demand for housing is high, right? Demand for diverse real estate is high. Urbanization is also a big part of that. So there's, the value of the land is constantly going up. Africa's positioned to become one of the most prosperous regions in the world. I know it's hard for some folks to see it, from now, right? But really, you're only going to benefit if you invest now. I hear folks complaining about China and Africa, China investing in Africa, China doing this and that in Africa. They see the writing on the wall. Do we see the writing on the wall? There's a question, because they see it. Clearly they see it. Do we see it, right? So other areas of investment, potential investment on the continent, hospitality. These are some examples that I know of. We have folks who have, repatriated, open up hotels, or you can even lease a building and turn it into an Airbnb. It's a popular location. A lot of creative ways folks are getting into hospitality, because as the population, continues to expand, especially in urban areas, there's a greater and greater need for hospitality. Of course, food is one, right? agriculture. Cocoa is an important product, especially in Ghana and parts of West Africa. Oil, palm oil, different types of oil, food processing. A lot of the final product of raw food products from the continent are used in everyday foods all over the world, including the US. Folks don't necessarily know that they have palm oil in their, candy bar or whatever, but I guarantee if you look in 3 or 4 things, you're gonna see palm oil in there. So food processing is a major industry where folks can invest. And of course, technology. There's a major technological growth happening, especially in places like Rwanda, Nigeria, South Africa, in terms of telecommunications and other aspects of technology. We have phones that are made on the continent now. We have cars that are made on the continent now. We have several car manufacturers. They're not just assembling; they're making the parts, building it, and selling it. We have at least one example is Katanka in Ghana and Innocent in Nigeria, but there are many, many others as well. So that technology is critical. And of course, manufacturing. If we are really serious about creating the most generational wealth, we have to invest in manufacturing on the continent. There's a lot of need, there's a lot of opportunity. I have cardboard on here. There's like one source of cardboard for most of the continent, and that's crazy to fathom. But West Africa in particular, there's one source of cardboard, and most of the cardboard that folks are using is being imported. And when you have ship delays, there was a time when there was a lot of the ships in the sea were delayed for one thing or another. Products were being produced, but the cardboard to pack them and sell them wasn't available. So that stopped production, right? Something as simple as manufacturing cardboard could be a great opportunity to invest. We're talking about not just making money, but making wealth, right? Becoming, rich in terms of material things. There's a greater opportunity, there's a greater chance to do so on the continent than there is anywhere else in the world, including the United States. A dollar spent here will maybe in 10 years make you $10. That dollar might be $1,000 if you invested it in Ghana or Nigeria or Kenya, right? So that's what we're talking about. Really creating generational wealth that we can pass on to our generations with the tools that I mentioned earlier to make sure that we're not starting from scratch. They're not starting from scratch again, right? So it's important that we make this connection between our own personal wealth, the community wealth, and be global about it. We must be global in our concept of generational wealth building. I know that was a lot, right? And I think I'm good with time, just good. So we're gonna go ahead and open it up to any questions folks have. I'm gonna stop sharing.
Kelechi, I got a comment.
Yeah, bro.
If
And
I may.
Bob, let me. I'm gonna allow folks to
Sure.
unmute. So I'm gonna mute all, and then I'm gonna folks. You'll be able to unmute at this point. Bob, go ahead and unmute.
You ready?
Yeah, bro.
Okay. Yeah, I like to say that this was a very, 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 very beautiful presentation, holistic presentation here. A lot of people should see this. But one thing, we talk about reparations, and people always talk about, well, when we get this money, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And all that's, I believe, is based primarily on the person's value system. And I think that, this would be what you just discussed should be almost mandatory before anybody get a dime. dealing with reparations. I mean, if and whenever, I shouldn't say if, but whenever that time comes,
Right.
people should be very knowledgeable about what was just mentioned, organization and individual and family, generational wealth building. And that's one of the comments that I want to mention. What else I have? Yeah. So that's about it. I think that's critical. That reparations, this be part of a reparations package. Even some of the old sessions that we had with Dr. What's her name? The sister that's a lawyer that does the financial.
You mean Amy Griffin?
Yes. All those sessions that we had with her and some of the other individuals, man, I mean, they were some great presentations that need to be included in the discussion on reparations. Because if it's not, I think reparations is going to be another futile attempt to do much or nothing. You know?
Right.
If we don't,
money are soon departed.
there you go. I mean, so that's my comment. Yeah.
And that's well taken, Bobby. Yeah, but we need to. I mean, and I wanted to cover a lot tonight. This is, I would say this presentation was probably 80% completely brand new. Some other stuff, but primarily, I really wanted to put it in perspective. And I know some folks are going to watch this later, and I encourage them to do so.
Yes,
it is important, that we have this perspective, we have this understanding, because it's only to our advantage, and it's to our disadvantage when we don't have this information. And this is really, at this point, should be basic information. Obviously, if you're a peer member and you're going to the workshop series, a lot of information you've already gotten some in-depth, of course, we still have those. I want to just sort of pick, key things from different presentations to really put it together in the context of the subject, and hopefully I was able to do that. Sorry about. Any other questions?
Yeah, but Bob, I would like to echo what Baba Kumba said in terms of the comprehensive nature of this presentation and how informative and enlightening it was. And the fact that, unfortunately, not many of our people took advantage of this opportunity tonight, but it is going to be on YouTube, right?
Yes, it's going to be on YouTube. It's on Facebook as well.
On Facebook, yeah.
Yeah,
So they'll have,
I can't tell who's watching it on
access,
Facebook, but
they'll have access to it.
Yeah.
And parent can be shared with the community.
Absolutely. And of course, we'll share it with folks on the email list as well. But it really is important. And we have each one teach one. We have to share this information. It's to our mutual benefit that the community is elevating its consciousness and its financial literacy, and its knowledge of what we can do right now. There's a lot we can say about what other folks didn't do or are doing to our detriment, but this is really about what we do, what we can do, what we must do for the betterment of not just us, but our grandchildren, really. I think we should be thinking the grandchildren. We do not need to, in my opinion, really focus too much energy on what our children need. Our children are going to get what they're going to get from us while we're here, for the most part, unless, obviously, if you transition early, that's not the case. But for the most part, normally, by the time our children, leave the house, they've already gotten benefit of us and what we've done. So it's not about them anymore. It's about our grandchildren. That's really how, at a minimum, how we should be looking, but we need to even think, past that.
Yeah, and what you were saying about certainly developing that last will and testament is so important, because like you were saying, Chadwick Boseman didn't have a will, and you can think of others like Aretha Franklin
for folks that had
In
all
France.
the money, you know, all the resources, but just didn't have that knowledge or perspective or appreciation or awareness.
Yeah,
And you know who gets paid? It's the lawyers, it's the courts, right? It's the
yeah.
government.
Government, yeah. Exactly. Oh, they sort that out. I mean, they're still sorting out some of these celebrities who
It
left
takes
no will.
it can take years and years and years to sort it
Yeah.
out. And all that money is just money being paid by the estate, you know, to pay for it. And I get that a lot of our folks, you know, they feel as if they sit down and write a will, or they sit down and with an estate planner and or do a trust, that somehow it's like they're welcoming death or something. Like they once they sign and die line, it'll be over, you know. You know, but of course, you know, we have to be mature about this. You know, we have to be serious about this.
Sure.
If we're serious about this, then we understand that all people die. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So what happens?
Yeah, you got to get away from here.
Right, right. No, somebody said nobody gets out. Nobody gets out of this thing alive.
And
You never get out of this thing
certainly
alive.
don't get out
right?
here with the money.
Right. So
Can't bring it with you, huh?
yep, you
No,
can't take it
sir.
with you. So it's important that we, you know, and you know, I think that we need to be serious people, and this is one of those ways. Not that, you know, it can't be, you know, have fun or whatever, but I mean, in this aspect, we have to be very serious. We have to prepare. Take the time to do it. It's really, you feel so much better once you have a plan that's written down that can actually be not just in your head, right? It's actually, you know, on paper, documented, you know, and then your heirs and generations to follow can benefit from you being here, from you building all that time, right? Fortunately, you know, not just the celebrities, you know, the millionaires, you know, even the thousandaires lose their thousands because they didn't write, right? You know, some distant relative somewhere that some bank decides is all of a sudden getting everything because you didn't tell them, you know, you have, you know, a life partner that, you know, is actually the one, you know, taking care of the children, but now they don't get anything because they're not even on paper. All types of situations come up because we just don't take the time to prepare, and you know, there's no excuse for it. But you know, that's you know, that's well, that comes from not knowing. And I hope that the presentation today was helpful and was informative. And of course, as I mentioned, Appeal has a wealth of workshops in our archives. Appeal.
Oh yeah.
Just go to sign into your profile, go to the Appeal archives, and you can watch, listen to presentations on a variety of topics. And of course, if you're not a member, you can very easily join by going to appealinc.org. It's a painless process, you know, but you know, that's part of our mission is to raise the educational financial literacy level of our people, because we understand that a fool and his money are soon departed, right? And if we want to really empower our people, they have to understand how money works, how it affects them positively and negatively, and how to improve those relationships.
The other piece is the Black Saturday Co-op, which of course is essential for many of us. I know for me and my family, we try to get there every Saturday that the co-op is open. And certainly we want to support those vendors, those manufacturers who supply the products that are sold there. And I'm just wondering if you're happy with the turnout that you get and what we can do to get more people to patronize the co-op, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's, you know, I'm reminded of what happened in Montgomery during the bus boycott. Honestly, you know, when we were being abused, mistreated by the white-owned bus companies, state bus companies. And, Black people stood up and decided, enough is enough. We're sick and tired of being sick and tired, right? And decided we were going to boycott until they started treating us better, treating us fairer. And because Black folks were boycotting the city buses and some of the white-owned buses, even the Greyhound, not just the local buses, but something similar happened with the Greyhound buses, but the buses that travel all over the country. And that created an opportunity for Black-owned bus companies to be started locally and nationally. And while we were boycotting their bus companies, because we were boycotting their bus companies, we were able to create our own bus companies. And as soon as they saw what was going on and saw how much money they were leaking, they gave in, right?
Right.
And as soon as they gave in, we ran back to them and abandoned all those bus companies that we started. And now we don't have any national bus company, even though we had some. So, when the pandemic, or as Baba Rasfi calls it, a plandemic happened, everybody lost their source of bathroom tissue, paper towels. The white manufacturers, they got their, their own sources of material and what have you, and they couldn't fulfill the orders, and there was a shortage. Everybody was scrambling for bathroom tissue.
I remember
because we had our own source, because we had our own manufacturer. We were the only folks who had bathroom tissue in town. We had all the bathroom tissue you could want.
Wow.
All of a sudden, our sales, I think it probably multiplied by 10 in a month. All these folks we've been telling all this time about the co-op, get the emails in there. All of a sudden, they were lined up buying cases. We would sell everything out, every single co-op. After the pandemic, right? Some of them folks remained customers, but most of them went away. They went back to the white bus company, right? So, it's the nature of the beast. We have a sustainable customer base, and it's growing. Of course, the farmers market is also growing. It's a big part of our customer base, especially when we have, certain fruits and vegetables. Folks love when watermelons come out, everybody's lined up, and that brings customers to the co-op in general as well. So, we could always have more. I mean, I'm always, a lot of the folks who come to the co-op are not necessarily members. Most probably are members, but a lot of our members, even the ones who are local, don't come to the co-op. It's like they don't know what they have. And they will be saving money, patronizing a Black business, supporting Black manufacturers, all by just going there. It's supposed to go instead of going to CVS or wherever they go, but they don't. So we keep beating the drum, Baba. There's no alternative. We're not turning back, and we'll continue to grow at the rate that we grow. Expand at the rate that we're expanding. And I'm very pleased that we can have we have returning customers, we have new customers every co-op. As I mentioned, we're having to hire somebody to help with the workload starting this weekend. So not this weekend, next weekend we'll have co-op. And as we grow, we'll be able to expand, provide more products, expand our hours and so on and so forth. But I'm prepared for the journey, Bob. I'm not shy about the walk. We're gonna walk.
Absolutely not. Come too far now. Turn around.
Yeah, bro. Ain't none of that. It's not how we're built.
And of course, you've been a big part of it, Baba. So we must congratulate you and be thankful for your input, man.
Yeah, no doubt.
And consistency and commitment, Absolutely. We appreciate you.
Yeah.
Greatly.
I definitely appreciate it. I appreciate everybody like yourselves, that come out every co-op and support. Get what you need, right? This is not a charity,
Yeah.
right? Get what you need at a lower price than you might get it at the store. And at the same time, you're supporting Black businesses, Black manufacturers, and you're getting, healthy, fresh, organic vegetables all at the same time. We have last co-op was the day before Father's Day, and we have Father's Day called Black Father's Day called made by Kofi Tires. You're not gonna find Black Father's Day called anywhere else. Not like these.
Right. That's right.
Right.
So being there allows us to provide those services, and that's what makes it worthwhile. When you see folks come in there and they're like, "Wow, this is amazing." So yeah, we're there, and we're there to stay, Bob.
People, Bob.
So I think it's 9 o'clock. We're gonna go ahead and wrap it up. Again, thank you for the audience, and for the folks who are gonna watch this later on. Definitely check out all the references I made, and the obviously if you're a PO member, you can check out some of the workshops. If you're not a member, you can join, and hopefully you elevate. There's Mama Teresa. How are you, Mama?
Greetings. How are you?
I'm good.
I just wanted to say this was really excellent. I'm always amazed. I'm always learning something new from you. This is really powerful. I think this should be played at every single family reunion that's coming up this summer.
Yep.
And I think, one of the things I'm interested in, we can talk about celebrities, but I think we have to look in our own community and look at our own family stories about what's happened with our homes being, that largest assets. And, I was just thinking like we can do a family tree and just look at the home ownership and what's happened with every single piece of land in every home. And look and see if there's a pattern of something going on that may be positive or not so positive, and talk about how we can make changes so that we can pass it on.
Absolutely. And not just the homes in the cities, but a lot of us have, ancestral land in the South, in North Carolina, in Georgia.
Our family.
Same thing is happening with those.
Yeah. Like my grandparents had 10 children. And before my grandfather passed away, he made sure, he bought about 80 acres of land. And so my grandmother, they divided it amongst the 10 children. One of my uncles had a barbershop and he lost it. So these white people were trying to come and take his land. And one of my cousins bought him out because they're really trying to buy the land down there. And there's more development going on in the South. So, we're having conversations about, passing on to the young people the value of holding onto the land and having it for the family, having a place to come to. So we have about 6 homes down there now.
Good.
Yeah. But it's important to have these conversations and look at some of the successes and some of the things that were not successful and have the conversations. I think it's
absolutely. And the conversation is critical. It is critical. It's critical. And we need to have it in advance as much as possible, as early as possible.
Well, there's still time.
It's too late. When everybody's, emotions and senses are heightened because of some tragedy that happened, it's too late. Opportunity to be rational and to plan is lost. So it's important that we're proactive in that way. Yeah, Bo.
Yes.
Thank you.
And also, don't forget to join us on July the 28th for the next forum. And we'll be discussing the health crisis in our community, the continued health crisis in our community. Our health hasn't improved in the past few years. So we're going to offer some suggestions, and we're going to also offer some suggestions as to how can we get this information out to the people who need it the most. Sometimes we speak to the choir when we have these forums, but we got to find a way of getting this information to the people who definitely need it the most, man. You know that old commercial, what's in your wallet?
Right.
Sometimes I look at what's in your shopping cart.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you look in the
Check it
store
out.
Simon, you look and you see what people are buying, and you say, "My God, man, that's not good." You know? So
Yeah.
we're going to be talking about the health crisis on July the 28th. So be with us on the 28th of July.
Yeah, bro.
There you go, Bob.
All right. So good night, everyone. Thank you for the audience. Everyone have